Hey, everybody, welcome to the Central Texas Football Podcast. I'm coming to you from our worldwide headquarters in Huron, Texas. Ryan's out in parts unknown. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Kenny. How are you?
Good. Hey, kind of a crazy week in football with the weather and some game cancellations, some games getting moved to Saturday. Talking about La Vega, Salina, I believe they played that one in Mansfield, but we're going to go over a few games, and first, we're going to thank our title sponsor, Jolie Godfrey Mortgage Broker at My Community Home Loans. Go to Facebook and you can get a hold of Jolie at Jolie Jolie Godfrey Godfrey, and we want to thank Ranch Masters Real Estate for sponsoring and Reed Holiday Lighting. So Christmas for most people is right around the corner. They skip Halloween and Thanksgiving, so give the Reed boys a call and they'll come hang your Christmas lights for you. All right, you got a Matt Stepp question of the week for us?
Yes, sir. So our weekly Matt Stepp question of the week. The question for Mr. Stepp this week was: last week was a crazy week in Class 2A Division 1, Region 1, with Axtell and Dillon getting handed losses and the uncertainty at Rio Vista. How do you see this region shaking out? Who's your favorite and who is a dark horse? And Matt Stepp's answer was: right now, I'd have to list Hamilton as the favorite to repeat in Region 1, but Frankston out in East Texas is catching my eye as a dark horse as well. Oh, you're muted, Kenny. There you go.
All right, this microphone's has a mind of its own. Probably need to switch. Yeah, we don't cover Frankston, but I did go back and look after he sent that, and yeah, they're doing all right. I think they got a big game against Grapeland coming up. Grapeland.
Yes, I believe so. And just checking the rankings before we start recording, Frankston is, I believe, number 7 in the state, according to Dave Campbell's in Class 2A Division 1. Team that's kind of on the rise in Frankston. Again, we don't cover them very much, but they've gotten more competitive over the past few seasons, but now in the top 10, according to Dave Campbell's, which is the official rankings of Texas high school football. But yeah, as a dark horse kind of rising out of there in Region 1, I guess right now that's just looking like maybe one of the underdog candidates to try to take down Hamilton here in Region 1 in Class 2 Division 1.
Yeah, it was like that last year. Nobody really could pick. I think some people picked Axtell. No, I don't think anybody picked Hamilton last year. But of course,
Right.
they had a great season, and it's a weird region. You got two Syntex regions, and then you've got one out east and one up north, up that area. So, a couple of big games that we're going to talk about. Kind of measuring stick games. You got let's see, we've got Dillon and Valley Mills, and then I think Hamilton, and we don't have it on our list, but Hamilton Crawford play each other, and Crawford's pitched two shutouts so far, that beaten Centerville and another team, I forgot who it was. So that ought to be good to kind of see if Crawford's kind of back under Coach Robinson his first
Right.
year, how they do. I think this is a good test for Valley Mills. I kind of had them as my dark horse, maybe not to win the region, but to maybe go 3, surprise some people and go past that second round, maybe third or fourth round. They've got a really good running back in Jay Sean Johnson. He's a low to take down. They call him Papa. So it's going to be a pretty interesting week for 2A D1 Region 2, I think.
Yeah, and like you mentioned before with Crawford, it's a very, very impressive start for Coach Robinson taking over the reins at Crawford. Like you said, 2 shutouts, one win, 19-0 against Anderson Shiro, and then a 20-0 win over a Centerville team that's usually pretty stout defensively. To hold them scoreless and then score 20 points on what's usually a pretty stout defense, pretty good start for them. But yeah, Valley Mills and DeLeon, that's a game we'll touch on later on in the show. But yeah, I think another exciting week of Texas high school football coming up in Central Texas, Kenny.
Yeah, and I think with Crawford, yeah, they've been down for like 2 years, because 3 years ago
Right.
we watched them play in the state semifinal against Holly there in Mineral Wells. So
Wells,
I
yep.
think the kids are there, the want to, the support, everything's there in Crawford. Maybe just a little bit of new blood is probably all they needed. So it'll be fun to watch how they do. All right, let's review. I watched this game on YouTube Friday night. What a great game! Lorena 38, Koff 35. Uh, I saw a tale of two Malakoff teams. One Malakoff team with Jerry on Hall as their running back, and one Malakoff team without Jerry on Hall because he got hurt. I don't know when it was, but it was a back and forth game. Malakoff hung with Lorena, even though they didn't have their guy. But man, Jackson Blanchett, what an incredible performance! I just with Blackwell being on that team and getting recruited, I just don't see how Jackson is not getting a lot of eye. He may already have. I don't know if he's got offers, but I thought he played well. What a great quarterback.
Yeah, Jackson. Through 2 games, he's 16 yards shy of 800 passing yards through 2 games, to go along with 6 touchdowns. He's also put on almost 150 yards rushing and another touchdown on the ground as well, and very efficient passing as well. He's completing about 60% of his passes, so phenomenal start for him and a big win for Lorena, going on the road against Malakoff, which was ranked #1 in Class 3A Division I last week, and getting a huge road win. Now, with Jerry and Hall going out, like you mentioned, it's probably a different Malakoff team whenever he's not taking the handoffs out of the backfield. But still, a tremendous performance from Blanchett and this running game too, for Lorena. De Leon, like you mentioned, he has 349 yards and 4 touchdowns through his first 2 games. Again, but no matter how you slice it, a huge win on the road for Lorena here in week 2 last week.
Yeah, it kind of shakes up that 4A D2 district they're in with Connley and all them because you kind of thought, well, last year they didn't make the playoffs. China Spring didn't make the playoffs. Gatesville got in, and Connley and Robinson La Vega. Lorena's for real, and China Spring had they beat Franklin week 1, lost a close game. Well, they were up early against Bastrop, and Bastrop come back and beat them. That's another thing you talked about, Brody. They throw the ball a lot, but he runs it. Last week he had 70 yards and a touchdown, but he also had over 100 yards receiving.
Right.
They got a kid in Carson Miller, that's a really good receiver that kind of went off in week 1. So man, I don't know that they're on La Vega's level, but I look for them to challenge that second tier along with China Spring and Gatesville. I think they're 2-0, and they got Glen Rose this week. So what a stacked district. Malakoff, I think they'll be fine.
Right.
Davion Johnson came in, did okay. They got a new quarterback in Canyon Marsh. I believe they've got Grandview, and not this week, next week, but they got Grandview coming up. I think they still play, so that'll be an interesting one, kind of a yardstick game there.
Yeah, and again, we don't know the extent of Jerry Hall's injury. He was taken out of the game against Lorena. But we don't know the extent of the injury. Hopefully it's nothing severe and he can get back on the field soon because Malakoff, again, they're a talented team. Again, breaking in a new quarterback and some new young receivers as well. Having a guy that's been there for the last couple of years like Jerry Hall, kind of a veteran presence, and kind of being able to lean on that run game is something that the Tigers are going to need very heavily early on. So hopefully they can get him back as soon as possible.
All right, let's go to the game that we are at. We're only going to review 2 games. We were at Farrington Field. Whitney went up there to play Benbrook, and man, if you like a defensive struggle, if you like a defensive game, you probably wouldn't have been happy. But if you like a lot of points scored, that was the game for you. It was a back and forth. I think Benbrook took a double-digit lead once or maybe twice. Mm-hmm. Whitney clawed back and took a 3-point or 4-point lead a couple of times. Had the coaches show with Coach Haynes. I apologize for us because the last 5 to 7, 10 minutes, it was just chaos. Nobody knew what was going on. Certainly not going to blame the refs for everything.
No.
It's a hard job. It's hard finding people. One thing we did notice in the broadcast is a lot of times they wouldn't come over to the home side stands or the press box and signal a penalty. So at the very end, they didn't signal the penalty, and so we didn't know what was going on. We saw that they really didn't do a 10-second runoff. They just started the clock, and I think they thought Whitney would snap it with 1 second left. There's a lot of confusion. Not taking anything away from Benbrook because in my opinion, that's a really good football team. Probably the best quarterback that a Whitney team is going to see until they get into the second or third round of the playoffs. Probably the same with the skill kids. Now their stud running back, he went out early too, but they had a couple to back him up. But Benbrook, both teams probably need to work on their defense a little bit. but both teams can score.
Yeah, Benbrook. I mean, you can't say enough about their quarterback, Brennan Barton. I mean, he put that team on his back offensively, especially after, like you mentioned before in the early going. I think it was only their second or third offensive drive. Their stud junior running back Carlos Harris went out. He took a screen pass. They took it for about 29 yards down to the red zone, or probably within the 10-yard line, and kind of got caught up in a little pile. And then it looked like he hurt his ankle, and he stayed in his pads for the remainder of the game, and he was running and jogging and trying to get something going to see if he could nurse that ankle and see if it'd be good to go. But the trainers and the coaching staff just did not put him in, probably kind of as a precaution, because that's a guy that Benbrook's going to need, especially when district rolls around with that tough district with Glen Rose at the top there. They're going to be trying to contend with Glen Rose for that district championship spot. But again, you can't say enough about Brennan Barton. I believe he had 5 touchdowns against the Wildcats.
Over 400 yards passing, like
over 400
57
yards
yards
passing.
rushing. Yeah, and I think his rushing stats are kind of skewed because he did get sacked for some big losses, but there in the third and the fourth quarter, he had some great scrambles and probably designed QB draws that scored a couple of touchdowns and got him inside the red zone. So, exciting game. The Whitney, Jonte Johnson rushed for 150 yards. Kobe Haynes 155 yards receiving with a couple of touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
The new quarterback Fisher Watson threw for over 300. Probably had a couple he'd like to have back, but for a second start,
Not bad.
Just like that, I'd say very good
Against a good 4A team, and then Jonte.
Especially if you think that if Glen Rose loses to Gatesville, they'll be 0-3. And I don't know that you don't think that Benbrook may be the favorite in that district after that.
Right, absolutely. I mean, they certainly have the guys to do it. I mean, like I said, you and I saw it firsthand. Brennan Barton, what really stood out to me about him as a passer was his pocket presence and his escapability. I mean, he got sacked about 5 or 6 times, but it could have been more than that. But his escapability and able to avoid rushers and get outside the pocket, and then his accuracy as well, especially on the run, was unbelievable. I mean, the coverage was kind of tight. There's a couple blown coverages by the Whitney secondary, but even when there was like tight coverage, Brennan Barton was putting it on the money.
He was
just a good quarterback, especially on the run. I think he was playing his best when he was getting chased, when he was on the run.
He had a handful of drop passes that just hit dudes in the hand that dropped them. But yeah, he is really impressive. And he like you said, his pocket presence and his ability to get away. He had some dudes with some speed chasing him. Those outside linebacker types, Delvion and Jacaden, both are super fast, and they got to him a couple of times. But a lot of times he was able to step up and get away from him and then go get a game.
And again, with Carlos Harris, the running back, going out in the second or third drive, Brennan Barton pretty much took over the run game too. I mean, a couple other guys, Desmond Chambers and Elijah Scoggin for Benbrook, they were in the backfield and got a couple carries, but they really couldn't establish the run game unless it was, like you said, a design QB run for Brennan Barton, or just Brennan Barton escaping the pocket and then just picking up 6 or 7 yards, just trying to avoid a sack.
Yeah.
I think Brennan Barton needs to be on a lot more teams' radars. I mean, I think he's got the size, to be a next level quarterback. I think he's about 6'1", just about 180, 190 maybe, but he could move and he could throw. He had a couple overthrows, didn't overthrow him by much, but again, with his ability, his escapability, and his way to maneuver around the pocket and hit receivers on the run and kind of throw them open as well. It was like that was my main takeaway from Benbrook. That was my first time ever seeing them play. A relatively young program. They didn't start varsity football until 2016. But things keep shaking out the way they have with the rest of that district. Benbrook could be the team to beat in District 4, 4A Division 2.
Yeah, they're impressive. Fun to watch them, and I'm definitely going to keep up with them for the rest of the year because I thought
absolutely.
I think the quarterback and the receiving group, the skill kids were really good. All right, so let's go to a couple of, I don't know that surprises, but Fairfield 66, Mahia nothing. Cole Collins went off again, almost 300 yards passing with the 5 TDs, and KD Johnson, I believe, is his wide receiver. Man, they've got something special over there. And I'm really wanting to see that Westwood game. We kind of talked about that in our preview that maybe that might be a little bit more of a game than it was last year. And I think it will be. I think Fairfield's got something going, and they really put it on a Mahia team that won a district championship last year. They lost their running back, but they brought back some of their skill kids, and kind of surprised. I figured Mahia would score on them, but man, they threw the shutout and hung half 100 on them.
Yeah, that scoreline surprised me big time. I know you felt good about it because you felt good about Fairfield even in the preseason, and they proved you right here. Mahia team, I'm not really surprised that Fairfield's put up the amount of points they did. I'm like you kind of alluded to just now. I'm more surprised that Mahia didn't score whatsoever, and that I think that speaks highly to the defense that the Eagles have out there in Fairfield, and that's just. No matter how you slice it, that's just an impressive showing.
Yeah, and I think Westwood, if they win that district, I think it could be one of those years. I don't think that region's like I still think Franklin's good, and I still think Columbus is good, but I don't think they're as good as they were last year. And I think you could have a scenario where maybe they finish second, and once they get past that first or second round, they may have a pretty decent path to make a semifinal, a region semifinal. So I like Fairfield. Cole Collins, a good baseball player, terrific quarterback. KD Johnson, great receiver. I saw their highlights, look great. Just not missing a bump. They're just fantastic, and kind of makes you scratch your head about Mahia a little bit and kind of where they're at. But
right,
district last year, they have the ability to bounce back. They got beat by a West team that didn't even make the playoffs in district 7-6, I believe. A very low scoring game. Then went and won the rest of their district games. So that team and coach now have the ability to bounce back. Things like that. So hopefully they're all right.
Yeah, I think so. I think they'll be just fine. And again, you got a lot to address whenever you give up 66 and you can't score. But Mahia's always got the athletes. And again, coming off the district run they had last year, I think they'll be fine as well. They could be a step down from where they were last year. But again, you don't want to put the whole season, run out in just one game. I think they'll be fine as well.
All right, let's go. So a game we previewed last week that we thought might be a pretty good game, like a yardstick game. I know we use that term quite a bit, but Chilton at Italy, and really wasn't much of a game. Chilton, beat them through another shutout, 46-0. Minerco Thomas, their quarterback, had a pretty good game. What surprises you more, that Chilton scored that many, or that Italy just couldn't get anything going?
I think just more like kind of similar to what we thought with Mahia, that Italy couldn't get anything going. I think you look at what Italy did in week 1 against Scurry Rosser, a bigger school, putting on, they gave up 28, but they scored 31 in a 3-point victory. And then to turn around and what's typically a pretty solid 3A Division II team in Scurry Rosser, and then turn around and face a 2A Division II team. So you're punching down here. And it's a good Chilton team, but not scoring at all. That kind of raises an eyebrow over here for me as well.
Okay, so what do we have? So let's go to our preview. Man, it's going to be a good one, and I'm kind of excited about this game. Robinson at Alvarado, Friday, 7:30, one of those times. You think about Alvarado, you think of a team that has a potential to score a lot of points, and they have this year with Rice McCurdy and Moreno and Medlock. And then Alvarado, they were in the region finals against Salina last year with their all-world quarterback, Cartier Collins. They've still got their running back, DeMarcus Belton. I believe they put it on Godley pretty good the first week and didn't play last week. So another good game for a D2 going up against a D1. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think we're talking a lot about DeMarcus Belton before we started recording. Yeah, they did take it to Godley in week 1, 72-7 to open the season 2 weeks back. And then last week they traveled to Van Alstyne. I don't know if the game ever kicked off. I know there was a very long weather delay, and then they ended up just calling it because I believe that's a pretty. I'm not sure exactly where Van Alstyne is, but I'm sure it's a pretty good drive
Yeah, it's
from Johnson County.
north of McKinney up on 75, so it's a pretty good ride for them.
Right, and with DeMarcus Belton, uh, phenomenal athlete. In the one game against Godley back in week 1, he had 161 yards on the ground with 5 touchdowns, and then through the air, six catches, 147 more yards, and 2 touchdowns on top of that. So a dominant performance from DeMarcus Belton. The Indians are also breaking in a new quarterback, like you mentioned. Cartier Collier graduated after last season, and they're bringing in a new quarterback, KJ Jenkins, a 6'3", 225-pound junior quarterback who's kind of a different type of quarterback as opposed to Cartier Collier. Collier is kind of more mobile. He could beat you with his legs, but with the build and the stats also tell you he had -5 rushing yards in that game against Godley, and with his size 6'3", 225, you got to think he's more of a pocket passer. So it's a kind of a different approach offensively for the Indians, just a little bit. I mean, again, when you have a guy like DeMarcus Belton where you can just kind of hand it off and he can do his thing, that's always good to have. But breaking in a new style of quarterback with going from a mobile guy like Cartier Collier to this now probably more pro style pocket passer like KJ Jenkins, I'm sure it's a nice change of pace for the Indians, and it's shown. Of course, they didn't get to play Van Alstyne last week, but again, putting up 72 points in your first varsity start at quarterback for Jenkins, not too bad.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be, Coach Brown's going to bring the Rockets up there and face Coach Walraven and Alvarado. I'm going to go. Robinson Rockets in this one. What about you?
I'm going to take Alvarado at home on this one. I think it's going to be a very close game. I think it's going to come down. I think it's going to end up being a one-possession victory. I wouldn't be surprised if Robinson came into town and won. But I like Alvarado because, again, not only did they put up all those points against Godley, 72 points, but also holding them to 7. So they're looking salty defensively early on as well. Again, that's only one game. And you got to wonder how it affects the players mentally after traveling all the way to Van Alstyne last week and not being able to get the game in. So they haven't played in 2 weeks. So it could take them a little longer to kind of get into a rhythm, not being able to play for 2 weeks. So I think being at home, it will be their home opener. I think it'll be huge for the Indians, and it's probably their first true test of the season, especially on defense when you coming up with a guy, 3, in some polls 4-star quarterback, Bryce McCurdy. I think it's going to be a phenomenal matchup and definitely a game to keep an eye on.
All right, so let's go over to Hamilton County, where first-year coach Brendan Whitaker of the Dillon Bearcats is going to hop on Highway 6, drive over to Valley Mills. Maybe they'll get there early and go to the Burger Walk and either get some sesame chicken or a cheeseburger. That's a cool place. You can either get Chinese food or a cheeseburger. And go against Coach Featherston and the Valley Mills Eagles. Valley Mills is kind of my dark horse in that region. We talked about it in the preview. I'm not saying they're going to go win the region, but I think they got a good chance to go 3, maybe 4 rounds deep. They've got a tremendous running back in Jay-Sean Johnson, who went for 175 and 5 touchdowns last week. At Dillon, they kind of got a quarterback that's I don't know if he's getting heavily recruited, but they like him a lot. Heston Jobe. Kind of had a down game last week against a really good Stanford team. So they're looking to bounce back. Another yardstick game, how is this going to shake out? These teams are in the same region. They may meet again down the road. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it'll be another great game. Again, with like Jay-Sean Johnson, one of the top running backs in Central Texas, a favorite of the shows, no doubt about that. Dillon, again, losing by 13 on the road at Stanford last week. A ranked Stanford team, number 8 in Class 2A Division. I think 2A Division 1. They're they might be Division 2 actually, but either way, they're in the top 10 in their division. Because Valley Mills again picking up a big win last week. I like Valley Mills at home in this one.
I think I'm going to go with you on that one. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. Valley Mills
Yep.
giving up some points, 27 last week, and I think 20 something last week. They got a lot kind of a two-headed monster in Bryson Bell, wide receiver. Jay Sean, some people call him Papa Johnson
Mhm.
at running back. He's just a beast, man. He's 5'11", over 200 pounds. He's fast enough to
Wrecking
break
ball.
one. He's hard to get down. But at Dillon, Coach Brennan Whitaker, he spent time. He was a Hamilton head baseball coach. Spent time there. Was a quarterback coach at South Lake Carroll. So this guy's been around some really good offensive
Mhm.
minds up there at South Lake. So I look for them to get that offense going. And I think it's going to be a high scoring game. And I'm with you. I've kind of picked Valley Mills, to do some damage early on, so I'm going to stick with them. I got the Eagles.
All right.
All right, so here's Chilton. Are they at Marlin? No, hold on. Who do we got? Oh, Connley and Grandview. No, Franklin and Lorena. I'm sorry, I skipped one. Franklin and Lorena. Franklin 0-1, lost to China Spring in week one. Krishawn Gregory kind of had his career night there, rushed for a ton of yards. China Spring was breaking in a new quarterback. Franklin's breaking in, running backs. They lost their stud Bubba Jackson. Uh, Going up against a pretty hot Lorena team that they did lose that opening game to the private school Austin Regis down.
Yes.
I think it's going to be a good one. They're at Lorena. What do you think?
I think this will be a good one. I think that Franklin loss to China Spring kind of surprised us a little bit back in week one. And I was looking, and they did not play in week two. But I guess from what we could deduce, they couldn't get a game scheduled for week two. I don't know if they have one initially scheduled for week two before the season started, but either way, they did not play last week. So, like we just mentioned a little bit ago with Alvarado, Franklin hasn't played in 2 weeks since their 14-point loss to China Spring. And Lorena, like you said, red hot, coming off a huge road win against Malakoff, who again was the number one team ranked in Class 3 Division 1 last week. They dropped down to number 7 after the loss to Lorena going into week 3 here. I like Lorena in this one. I like Lorena at home. I think with Franklin, I think there's still some questions, like at the running back position, especially, and at quarterback, that we just don't know yet. But what we do know is that Jackson Blanchett is a heck of a quarterback, and they got a heck of a running back there as well. I don't know why his name escapes me. We're just talking
Brody
about it.
Dillon.
Brody Dillon. I like Lorena in this one. Again, I think just with just some of the questions that you and I still have about Franklin, I think I'm going to take um, the Leopards in this one. But another thing to consider is, can you kind of get, I hate to use this term, but kind of get drunk off a big loss? Can it, is that a bad thing or a good thing coming off such a huge victory going into the next game? And that's I feel like one of the toughest things to do as a coach when you're coming off such a huge win against a ranked opponent, much less the number one team in the state at the time, on the road, no less. You want your players to be riding high, but whenever you get back to this week preparing, for Franklin, because Franklin, despite the questions we have, it's not going to be a walk in the park. They're still going to be Franklin. Coach Hedrick does a great job over there. It's like, don't let yourself get too high or get too overconfident. You got to get back to business as usual. And I think with Lorena, I think they're one of those programs. They're always coached well. I think that's probably been a point of emphasis for them at practice this week. Okay, you got this big win now. We're back to business. So keep a level head, put the work in, because you got Franklin coming into town, and it's not going to be any dog. It's not going to be any dog walk. But with all that being said, I do like Lorena at home.
Yeah, and you talk about a big win. I forgot to mention it when we did the review on that. Franklin or Lorena drove down the field and got into field goal range with, I don't know, 1, 2, whatever seconds left, kicked it, made the field goal, but it was a false start.
Oh
So
my
they
goodness.
moved him back 5 yards, and I think his name's Johnson, the kicker. He kicked it and made it again. So talk about a big win. That's a lot. It wasn't like you knew you were probably going to win this game going to the fourth quarter. This was the last second, kind of a stunner. And yeah, I had a coach tell me that if you've got Franklin trying to throw the ball, you got Franklin exactly where you want. Now
Right.
that's not easy to do because Franklin has won several, a bunch of state championships. They're always in the mix in the Final Four, the Final Two in the region. So I think Lorena's got to play run defense. And I know this is a different type of offense than Malakoff has, but when
Right.
Gerald Hall was in the game, he was dicing them up pretty good.
Mhm.
And I think the Johnson kid did too. What's his Devion Johnson?
Mhm.
He was getting his. Uh, so they're got the if they can stop the run and make Franklin throw the ball. Now, that's not my philosophy. That's what a coach told me. The defense is doing its job, because Franklin
Right.
doesn't throw the ball a whole lot. And I know people say, "Well, duh, that's obvious. They're a veer or a slot T," but that's what you have to do to beat Franklin. Don't let them have success with that offense, that run heavy offense. Uh, and Krishan Gregory rushed for over 300 yards against Franklin. So if Brody DeLeon has a good game, and
Yeah.
Jackson can run the ball too. He's fast, dude. He's very elusive. He kind of reminds me of a Case Evans because he doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. He did kind of get in a little skirmish when he was on defense there at the end of the game and drove a receiver back into the Malakoff sidelines, and everybody wanted to like. So I like that. He's got a mean streak, but
Yeah.
man, he's really calm and collected out there. When he's running that offense, he doesn't get. You don't know if he just threw a 90-yard touchdown or a receiver dropped the ball is right to him. He's really smooth back there, and I'm with you. I think Lorena's hot, and they've been in the trenches, and they've come out smelling like a rose. And I think they're gonna, they got it at home. Franklin's gonna be tough, but Lorena's a 4A. They're a bigger. They're one step up. So I got Lorena in this one.
All right.
How about Connley right down the road in Johnson County, taking on the Grandview Zebras? That's Coach Garrett, Coach Ebner, both longtime Central Texas coach. Well, Ebner's about 5 or 6 years. Garrett's been Connley a little bit longer, I believe. Connley is kind of striking me as a team that's kind of playing to the level of the teams they're playing. They were down late against Little River Academy, came back and win. Waited a while against Lago to kind of pull it out. I think they won by double digits. 22-6. It was a close game early on. Maybe they were up by one score. Grandview, I watched most of. I had Grandview on my phone. I had Malakoff on the TV.
Mhm.
Grandview got down early, 13 nothing against a 4A school in Eagle Mountain, and man, they just kept chipping away, and they finally kind of wore that team down and scored two quick times there late to pull out the win. Uh, I think this is going to be another good one. What about you?
I like the slate of games this week. We have bangers all across the board here in week 3. I think this game is going to be fantastic. Grandview, Grandview salty. They're really salty, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Um, and Landers, the quarterback, he's played phenomenal through the first 2 weeks. He played phenomenal last year. I think I think it's going to be a great game. I think as far as athletes go, this is probably going to be the most athletic team that Grandview has seen so far. And Connley, I think this is going to be Connley's biggest test overall so far in this early part of the season. I think it's going to be a great game. I'm just not sure who to pick. I think it's going to be close. I think it'll be close throughout, and then one team pulls away. And if I had to pick, I think that one team for me would probably be Grandview. Like we saw them play Saginaw Eagle Mountain last week. Again, like you said, they fell down early and kind of pulled away towards the end. And I think they're just a team that's built for endurance. I think they can stay solid and stay conditioned throughout the game because of how they're coached and how they practice. And they're at home. I believe this is their first. No, they hosted Glen Rose in week 1, so they'll be back at home after traveling all the way up to Saginaw last week. Um, I like Grandview in this one.
One thing about Grandview, their two running backs, Hubbard and Dominguez, they're probably their two best. I mean, they're the two best defensive players too, and those dudes are going to be playing both ways quite a bit. I did see them pull them out every once in a while for a breather, but they started this one drive. I believe it was in the start the second half or sometime in the third quarter, where they just went wildcat and they just started rotating dudes. They had Hubbard in there. He'd break off 15. They put Dominguez in there. He'd break off 10 or 15. Then they put Yentz in there as a freshman. He had a
Yeah.
lot of playing time. I think he pulled back and threw a dart to a kid. So they've got a bunch of skilled kids that can do good things. I think Connley probably has more talent, but I think Grandview's a big. They're big enough up front. They kind of wore down that Eagle Mountain defensive line on offense. The defense gave up those two quick scores, so they had a really good running back for Eagle Mountain. But man, they Ebner kind of made the changes on defense, I guess, at the half or during the game, and really kind of shut them down there in the second half. With Jamarian Vincent, the Baylor commit, Braden Ford, who's just a terrific running back. Jamarian's really not playing quarterback. They've got a different kid at quarterback. I forgot his name. I looked it up. So he's been playing wide receiver, and of course he's playing DB.
Right.
I think I'm going to go Connley in this one just because they're a little bigger, a little faster, but I think it's going to be a terrific game. I think it's going to be close because I just think Connley's kind of like we talked about Benbrook being last year, kind of playing down to their competition at a bunch of close games. They won 11 games, but the majority of them are one-score games. Mm-hmm. This is going to be a good one over in Johnson County. I'd love to pull it up. I'm going to be out of town. I'm not going to be on the broadcast with you, so I may have to swap back and forth and mute it and keep an eye on it. But I'm going to go Connley on this one.
All right. First one we differ.
All right, University against China Spring. So China Spring was up big not big. They were up on Bastrop and kind of thought they were going to put it in cruise control and win that game. And man, Bastrop come roaring back and ended up beating them. University got their first victory of the year. They beat Granbury or
they beat Granbury on the road last week at dominant fashion, 41-8.
Yeah. So they've got they've got studs in the second. I don't think they got two, London Smith and another kid that are going to Baylor in the secondary there. China Spring. I didn't look at their stats against Bastrop, but I know against of course against Franklin, Christian Gregory ran for a ton of yards. So this will be a fun one. They're stepping up to a 5A. I guess two divisions against University. I'm going to go with University in this one.
I'm going to take the Trojans as well. I think what really surprised me last week, going on the road to Granbury, was the defense holding Granbury to 8 points. Now Granbury isn't typically known as like a offensive juggernaut, but still going on the road, University was down for a long time. I think ever since that 2022 season when Kent Laster came in there, who I believe is now the head coach in Denton Braswell, unless he's moved on to that job, he kind of laid the foundation for what University's been building for the past 4 seasons. And I think they've gotten better every year since, and it helps when you have guys like London Smith, who's getting looks from Baylor his freshman year. Yeah. Probably before then, his dad played at Baylor. I believe he coached at Baylor as well. He is a phenomenal athlete. I think they got a great team. They've always had athletes. I think they're really well coached. I like University in this one on the road as well.
All right, now here we go. Chilton at Marlin. Marlin's 0-2. They lost to, I'm assuming it's a pretty good Honey Grove team way up north. I'm thinking they're going to be fine, but I don't know. Coach Rogers, they did well last year. D'Angelo Wright at quarterback, Keyshawn Massington at wide receiver. Maybe it's just going to take a little time for them to get their wheels underneath them. But man, Chilton's been impressive. They're 2-0. They knocked off who they have? Italy. We just talked about Italy, 46-0. This is going to be a good one. I don't know who to pick. Who do you tell me what you think, and then you make your pick, and then I'll make my pick.
I think you and I think, I think you and I, especially when we did our preview, we thought Marlin was going to be pretty solid this year. And they've had a pretty slow start. They've been outscored 95-33 through their first 2 games. But you got to look at who they played too. Honey Grove has been a top 10 team in 2A Division I for the last 2 seasons. I can't remember who they had in week 1. I'll have to check that real quick. In week 1, that's right. They had Lexington, a really good 3A Division II team.
3A
Yeah, so they faced 2 top 10 opponents in their respective classifications, punching up, and in the same division, in the case of Honeygrove. I think with that tough pre-district competition, it kind of helps you prepare for district because you're playing these really tough teams, especially when you're punching up to a really good team like Lexington. It kind of sets you up better for a district run because you've already seen, more than likely, a better teams than what you'll see in district play, at least for the most part. But at the same time, Chilton's look good, man, especially defensively. They've outscored their first two opponents 78-12. I think this game's going to be a lot closer than what people may initially think, just looking at it on paper. Again, Marlin's been outscored 95-33, but again, look at who they've played. I think Chilton still takes this one on the road, but I think it's going to be closer than what most people think.
I think it's going to be a close game, but I think Marlin. I think they're going to get it together and they're going to get off the snide, and I think they'll win this one. I think Chilton's really good. I think they'll finish second that district marks. From what we've seen the first week, and then Maypearl pretty much handling up on them last week. Still got a learning curve. I still believe in Coach Lancaster. I think he's going to get this program. I was talking to a guy from Mart the other day, and everybody's thanking the school board. But man, Lancaster will be fine. He's going to get that squad turned around, and
they're punching up. They're punching up 3 divisions against Whitney and Maypearl. So I mean, you can't read too much into that. But again, with Maypearl, really did handle Mart. But I think just what they're punching up, and I think like you and I mentioned when we were broadcasting their week 1 game at Whitney, I think depth just takes over at some point, especially when you're punching up 3 classifications.
I think they had some injuries going into the Maypearl game. They were missing a few dudes, and and Coach Lancaster's he's probably changed it all up. I don't think he's the type of coach that's going to go in there and say, okay, let's do it the way we always done it. He's going to put his own twist and install the things that he wants to, the culture and that program, and it's a learning curve, kind of like us and our little football broadcasters. Sometimes we show up and we don't have what we need, but it's a learning curve, and I think I trust. I mean, I think our first or second year doing the podcast, we kind of had a question: who would you use to start a program with? And my 2 answers were Lancaster and Horn in Central Texas. Those 2 dudes right there. That's who I would want my program, to start with. So, I think Mart will eventually be okay. I don't know about this year, but I think Chilton, win or lose this game, I think they're probably gonna. I don't know how much of a game they'll give Bremond, but I think they're probably going to finish second in that district, and hopefully Martin ends up bouncing back and makes it a game for some of them. Some of those district games, but. Give me Marlin to get off the snide. They say, hey, don't forget about Bryson Bobo Steele, the big defensive lineman. That they like to run the ball at Chilton, and if he can clog that middle up and or if he can make the plays, let his linebackers make the play or safeties, that could be the deal. So hey, that's our last one. Let's going to the game, traveling to the game Thursday. I got a text. And so I said, hey, give me a holler. And I gave him a holler. I said, hey, have you heard about the Rio Vista deal? I'm like, no, I haven't. So we're not breaking news here. So I did some calling around, and it was about to come public that the district executive committee had found that they recruited players. And I mean, this is 12 miles down the road from my house. It's 15 miles probably. And I kind of disappointed that kind of happened underneath my nose, and I didn't know anything about it. But of course, you start asking around, oh yeah, you didn't know about that? I'm like, well, no, I didn't know. Why didn't you tell me? But bad situation over there. Hopefully, it works out for the kids that were there. I don't know that any of those transfers. They said it was from a 7-on, and this is all speculation. I don't know.
It's all alleged.
It's facts. It's just what I've read, and man, you get on that Cleveland Times Review newspaper. They share it. They broke that news, and if you got an extra hour, just go read the comments because it gets dicey in there. But I hate it for the kids that are there. I hope it's very. I mean, I know they overturned Westwood's last year, let them get in the playoffs. I kind of hope they do the same thing with Rio. I'd hate to see those kids that worked so hard the last 3. The seniors that worked hard for 3 years not getting in the playoffs. But I don't know when that's scheduled. I'm sure it's soon, before their district starts, because they said they would forfeit all their district games, and the district opponents they could say yay or nay if they wanted to play them or not. So that's I hate it for those kids.
Yeah, you definitely hate to see it for the kids. And I think the UIL has taken over an investigation, right? Because the postseason ban was by the district executive committee,
Well, yeah,
right?
the district executive committee will give out the punishment, and then the
Right.
team has the option to appeal it to the state
Right.
executive
Okay.
committee.
Right.
And so they'll huddle up, they'll view all the evidence. Sometimes people, from what I gather, will testify and they'll show
Mm.
documents and they'll just make their informed decision of what that. And reading the comments, a lot of Rio people think that everything's legit, or whoever's there now, they're all legit. But you just never know with UIL, like the kid up in Ropes in the Panhandle who actually lives in Ropes
Hmm.
and family lives there. They denied him. Of course, he went to two or three schools. Got in a little bit of trouble, but just didn't. So you never know. You never know on
Right.
eligibility with the UIL, and I don't think eligibility is even on the table now. I think it's just, hey, we want to be able to play in the playoffs. And one thing, none of the coaches were at the they didn't find any at fault with the coaches. Apparently, someone else is the one that. And this is speculation. Not nobody's proven to me that it's fact that, but this is what they're saying and reported that somebody else brought the kids in to play. So
Hmm.
unfortunate for them.
Right.
We got another game. We talked about a little bit. Hamilton Crawford will be a good one. Uh,
Yes.
I'm not gonna. I got to go out of town this weekend, so you'll be calling Whitney Hillsboro, which is a rivalry game. In the last two
Yeah.
years, I think Whitney has done better in the playoffs than Hillsboro has, but it's still a
Hmm.
close game. I think Haynes' first year that we kind of blew them out, but when you drive 12 miles down the road to play a team, and these kids all know each other, it's going to be a
Yep.
pretty good rivalry. So let's do our little Whitney segment. What do you think about that game?
I think the biggest question when it comes to Whitney is defense. Now, again, they've played a perennial two-way powerhouse in Mart, giving up points. But at the same time, that kind of looks a little different now because that same team faces Maypearl. Again, there could be injuries. You're not really sure what the extent of those are. And then Marlin or Maypearl only holds them to 8 points.
Yeah.
And then you look at what they did last week. It just seemed like even after Carlos Harris went down, the Whitney defense was struggling to stop Brennan Barton because again, Brennan Barton put that team on his back with Benbrook last week. I think the biggest thing, the Wildcats have no problem scoring. I don't think that's a problem. I think Fisher Watson's done very well with all those weapons. Jonte Johnson in both the running game and in the return game. Same with Kobe Haynes through the air. They have the weapons. They're going to score points. But the problem right now is figuring out how to stop the other team from doing so. But I think they'll have a good chance to prove that they can this week against Hillsboro. Hillsboro scored some points in their first 2 weeks. They won a 58-56 double overtime thriller at McGregor to open the season. And then last week they went to Troy and they gave up 55, but they also scored 30. So I think both these teams are kind of in a similar boat where they can score a lot of points, and they've shown that they can. And they're both breaking in new quarterbacks. Fisher Watson for Whitney, and then Josie Lopez is the new quarterback for Hillsboro, coming in for 2.5-year starter Moses Rangel. So they're both breaking in new quarterbacks, and both quarterbacks have played pretty well early, putting up a lot of points for their defenses. But also, I think or for their offenses. But I think both these offenses also lean very heavy on the run game, and I think there's going to be a lot of rushing yards in this game. It's going to be who can manufacture more stops. I know that's a cliche thing to do, but the turnover margin could be huge in this one as well. Because again, I think it's going to be a good matchup. It's always a rivalry. The last 2 or 3 years they've played, it's been close. Now Whitney's taken nine of the last 10 games overall, but I think 7 of those 10 games were within 10 points or less. So every time these teams play, it's a close game, and there's usually a lot of points scored. So I think it's going to be very similar this week. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored, and it could be what we saw last week against Benbrook, where it could be the last team with possession. It's going to be in their hands to win the ball game. I'm not going to give a score prediction, obviously. I'm an employee of Whitney ISD. I'm just going to hope it's a good game and everyone's injury free. But I think that game's going to be very high scoring. I think it'll be a shootout, and I think it's just going to be a classic rivalry game between those two teams.
Yeah, and Hillsboro's got that great running back and Braylon Benson. I think he was
Yes.
19 for 50-something yards. I don't know if they pulled him when
Yeah.
the game kind of got out of hand because I think it was out of hand early, and then Hillsboro scored a couple of touchdowns late to kind of make it somewhat respectable. And
Right, and
I
they
think,
have kind of a 1-2 punch there with him and Tylen Washington as well. So
yeah,
the running game is what they're really going to be leaning on heavily for sure.
yeah. Well, I just look for Troy rushed for over 200 yards against them. I look for Jonte Johnson to have a big game, and if they kick to him, he's probably going to return a kick for a touchdown. I think
Right.
I don't know that he's 100% with that knee, but he looks pretty close. Has some great runs. So I think Whitney has this one. Okay, let's do a lightning round real quick. How about that?
All right.
West Orange Stark at La Vega.
Ooh, that's a good one. Give me La Vega at home.
Dawson at Rosebud Lot.
Give me Brandon Hicks squad. I'll take Rosebud Lot.
Let's go. Well, Bremont at Moody.
Bremont.
Sorry. I didn't mean to laugh. Little River Academy at Burnett.
Ooh, that should be a good game. I like Academy. In that one.
This is a tough one. How about Troy at Rogers?
Ooh, that'll be a close one. Oh, man, I think that'll be a good game. That's kind of a coin flip if you ask me, but I'll take Troy on the road in that one.
All right. How about Malakoff at Madisonville?
I'll take Malakoff. I think Malakoff gets a bounce back win. But again, we'll also have to see where they are with Jerry and Hall, but I'll take Malakoff.
All right. 2-0 Rockdale at Lexington.
Ooh, that would be a good one, too. I'll take Lexington at home.
Giddings Buffalo at the Salado Eagles.
Ooh, I haven't seen much from either one of these teams so far. I'll take Giddings on the road in this one.
All right. Maypearl at Cameron Yo.
Give me Maypearl.
McGregor at West.
I think West. Like we saw McGregor with, like we mentioned, week 1 against Hillsboro, they put up 56 points. So McGregor has no problem scoring, but West, again, they gave up a lot of points to Robinson in week 1, but a lot of teams will. I think West gets the win at home.
How about Mart at Riesel?
That's kind of a rivalry game. Those two teams are kind of close. I'll take Mart to get the win on the road.
All right. Grossbeck at Centerville.
Ooh. I'll take Centerville at home on that one.
All right. Last one. Fairfield at, I think, 4A Brownsboro. I think they're 4A. Yeah,
I think
4A.
Fairfield with their dominant win last week. I think they keep it rolling. Give me the Eagles.
All right, man. Well, appreciate it. Once again, I want to thank our title sponsor, Jolie Godfrey, mortgage broker at My Community Home Loans. Look her up on Facebook, Jolie, Jolie Godfrey. Thank you to Ranch Masters Real Estate, and thank you to the Reed Holiday Lighting. And y'all be safe out there. Go watch you some football. Ryan, any parting shots?
Just be safe out there, like always. And if you're nearby a stadium that's got a good football game going on, go out and experience it. You had a long week at work. Go reward yourself by watching some good football.
Yeah, get you a Dr. Pepper and a cheeseburger or a chili dog or some nachos. I always like the nachos.
Yes, sir.
The ballpark nachos with the jalapenos. All right, y'all have a safe week. Good luck to your teams, and hopefully all of them are get out of there healthy. See ya.